live from the Dirt Bike Test shop. It's Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, which means we don't have any tacos yet. They're being delivered. I got my beer, got my one out of the cooler. It's been rolling around in there for a little while. Don't have a bartender. That's going to cut into my timing here, but we'll see if we can make this thing work out. See San Felipe Bob, Mark Schneider, some locals, some guys. Jessica, another girl that I used to run with. Running by mean running and drinking beer. So if you don't know what that is, that's my other hobby. So hopefully this thing will keep updated. We'll be able to do the questions, get to all those. I put up on our social media channels, and here's why you got to follow those social media channels. We're always doing different things and putting stuff in different locations because, unfortunately, everybody has a different metric by how they measure your success. So they would say, oh, how many Instagram followers do you have? Who's watching you on Twitter? And I really don't want to spend all my time trying to boost those things, but we do a little bit. So if you can share that stuff with some of your friends that are interested in what we're talking about, let them know that dirtbiketest.com, when you go on the website and you type into a browser and a website pops up, that is the base source for all this information. That's where we publish as much stuff as we can. But if you have paid attention to us for a while, you notice that there's not a ton of stuff up there. This is literally, just a few guys, and right now lately it's just been one guy. Actually, Scott put up a pretty cool Husky test that got a really good bump in traffic the other day. But we're just doing this in our spare time, and we're competing against companies that are, like the ones that used to put up all this stuff and did it professionally. It was our real job. So we'd like to make it that way again. We're working on some stuff to make it that way again. But when they say, well, you only have 4,000 people looking at you on Instagram, how valuable is that? Well, you guys are customers. You're their customers. It's not fake likes and all that stuff like that. It's not thumbs up stuff. So it really helps out when you share and talk about what we're talking about and tell people where you got some of the information, and that you can come here and get no nonsense, no BS, straight from the horse's mouth, answers to your questions, especially live, and especially if you comment on the ones where we're asking for the questions. So somebody says that Scott needs to bring back Supermoto Racer Magazine. If Scott were here right now, he could answer that question. Actually, you know what? Go blow up Scott's Facebook page and tell him he should be here doing this. Because I don't know. I don't even know where you find Scott. I find him every once in a while. I can text him, and we run into each other at intros. So, but when I came up with this crazy idea, Dirt Bike Test, I wanted to bring Scott in specifically because I've worked with him for a long time. I've known him. He's super passionate about this sport and Supermoto. And since I'm the guy that killed Supermoto and he's the guy that tried to keep it alive, and I guess maybe Troy Lee will forgive me for that. I don't know. We'll see how it works out. So anyhow, I'm going to roll right into some of the questions. One of the best questions I got was sent to us straight through Dirt Bike Test, our webpage, and it is Dirt Bike Test. I'm working on a privateer effort for the 2020 Baja 1000. That's a good thing that you're starting now. That's number one. That's the best thing you've done. We have our hands on a great deal. But I went through your review of the 2018 Husqvarna, the 2018 450 XCF. And so what his question comes down to is he wants to do it on a 2016 Husky FC 450. So he reviewed our 2018 XCF test, and he has a few concerns because him and his teammates are KTM guys, and that's what we're going to have for spare parts. And his main concern is the motor and how hard it hits. He says, to remedy this, I would like to install an EXC flywheel and stator to mellow the hit and make the electrical power to run dual Baja design squadrons. That's another good thing. Dual Baja design squadrons. Smart choice for lighting. So My question is whether or not you feel this EXC stator and flywheel change would greatly reduce the hit the motor has. We want something that finds good traction, is not a beast to ride. So I'll just kind of roll back and break this thing down. I would try to keep my bike as stock as possible, just from the get-go. And if I'm doing complete swaps of ignition components and everything, that can get a little bit tricky. So and then it goes back to, you want to alter the hit and the power character of the motorcycle. So the best thing, the two best ways to do that are to find some way to play with the fuel tuning, whether that's a JD jetting tuner or a Vortex ignition, something where you can alter the fuel and maybe the ignition. That would help a huge amount. And then a muffler can make a big difference. And if you're having a problem with hit and power delivery, sometimes let's see. So sometimes going to like more like a Q muffler, an FMF Q, or one that's a little bit quieter can sometimes change the hit. The header design makes a big difference, and unfortunately, as just a regular guy, you're not able to try all these different header lengths and stuff. But from my experience, the FMF Mega Bomb does smooth the power out, give the bike a little bit more of a torque feel as opposed to a hit. And if you notice, it's kind of funny because like we're a broken record. You start looking at a lot of the bikes that we have around here when we start long-terming them or develop, doing testing and stuff. That seems like the setup we're going to. Well, there's a reason for it. It's easy for us to get our hands on, but B, it works. So before I would start working on changing the ignition, in reference to changing the power character, I would look at doing something with the fueling. And if you want to reduce the hit, generally you add a little bit of fuel, like richen it up just a little bit, and it'll give the bike a sensation of more traction. And we're going to talk about the Yamaha Power Tuner and Power Tuner app a little bit later, and we'll get more into that a little bit deeper later. But in reference to the stator actually it's not the stator, the flywheel, the heavier flywheel, and I don't even know how much heavier it is because it depends on which generation. Like if you're talking about a 2016 Husky and a 2018 KTM, there's some different parts. It's a different engine family. There's been a big change there. So it's not just as easy as swapping one thing. It may be with KTM and Husky, it may be as easy as these parts all bolt right in. But I don't think you're going to find that the flywheel weight is going to be the big change that you're necessarily looking for. And then don't rule out gearing. Just altering the gearing, and especially when you're going to Baja with the taller gearing, sometimes that mellows out that hit to begin with. So I would kind of start simple, do the really easy stuff before you kind of get into something more difficult. And I'm pretty sure if the bike has a battery, there's going to be enough charging going on to keep that battery charged that will run those LED lights. They don't have a huge draw, but that's something you can check with Baja Designs. Those guys know exactly, if you're running two of them, they'll know if it's compromising your stator, and oftentimes they can just rewind your stock stator and you're bingo, good to go. So hopefully that answered your question. That was from Nate. Nate, good luck. I'm glad that you guys are taking your time to plan this thing out and stuff, and put a lot of miles on that bike before you go do that race. Don't just build it up and then that's its first run out there. Spend some time. You can actually do probably 4 Baja 1000s in that bike before it needs a rebuild. That's my opinion. So go out and take your time, test it, make it good. So let's see, or how are we doing on question? Jessica said on. Thank you, Jessica. on. I need to get back and run in Long Beach every once in a while. So I'm going to scroll. I always forget whether I'm supposed to go up or down on this thing. Let's see. Here we go. Chris Smith needs to hear what story? Let's see. They had a geriatric FS450 video. What? I don't know. Looking good, Jimmy. Casting to 65 degrees. That's Mark. We call him Clake. Good buddy Mark. He came to one of my classes and he had this interesting contraption from Australia. It's called a Clake, and it operates the clutch and the brake at the same time. A marvel of engineering. nearly impossible to have it functioning 100% perfectly all the time, is my opinion. But I've never had one on my personal bike. I just know that almost everyone I've ever come in contact with needed adjustments or or broke or did all that kind of stuff. So a little bit tough. Feet is spotless. That's good. Am I coming to Hangtown 51? Ed Santon misses me. Of course he does. I usually had a keg of this in my motorhome, and he would stop by for refreshments as needed. I'd love to come back. A lot of times people say, Jimmy, how come you don't race anymore? Because I don't want to race. But I loved riding certain races, and Hangtown was one of them. And if you ever get the chance to go do that, their amateur day, they run most of the same course that the pro riders do, except for the big double jumps you don't want to do. But that track is never prepped to that level. And I raced it a bunch of times when I was an amateur, and it was never as good as it is before the national, and the club goes out of their way to make you feel like you're on the national track. So I would always, when I was at Dirt Rider, I'd grab a bunch of staff and a bunch of 125s for me, and we'd go, have a great time at that event. So I'd love to come back up. Just it's a matter of squeezing into the tight schedule. Maybe when I quit doing this, I can just go ride dirt bikes all the time. So let's see. I have figured this out. I think I'm working on it. I need like a producer. The TLD Supermoto Fallout and how you ruined it. Okay, so I ran Dirt Rider magazine for about 8 years, and that was in the hey look, tacos are showing up. Don't get in the way of the. They don't want to hear me eat, so we'll just kind of keep them off to the side a little bit. I'll just I'll snack. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put one of you guys on here. You guys can take over the show while I eat. So back to the what was it? Oh, the Supermoto Fallout. So my take on Dirt Rider magazine, and when I got there was just when Supermoto was really starting to boom, and I actually did a few of the events. I raced. I was at Fontana. I raced at Fontana and a couple other places, and I loved it. I had a great time. But my take on it was Dirt Rider was about dirt bikes and knobbies, and those bikes did not have knobbies. So it was there was definitely a lot of dirt bike heroes that were racing it. I got to race against Jeremy McGrath and Doug Henry and a lot of really Jeff Ward, for instance, Troy Lee. So actually me and Troy Lee came together a couple times. Maybe that's why he doesn't like me. But we just kind of decided knobbies define a dirt bike. And I still run on that premise today when I teach my schools. I say, if you're going to ride in the dirt, you need to have a knobby tire, even on your adventure bike, a knobby type tire. So that was my thing, and we didn't necessarily put a lot of Supermoto in Dirt Rider magazine for that reason. I thought it was more of a street application. So there's that was my take on it. We did put some photos and stuff on it, but we weren't going to make it into Dirt Rider Supermoto magazine. Scott took the horns and made a Supermoto magazine. It was way better than we could ever do. So that's the story behind that one. So let's see here. Let's see. I'm going to look and see if we got any other questions. Somebody's in from Boise, Idaho. Thank you. Let's see. Let's see. Listening for Boise. I raced District 37 4-stroke open in 98. Current bike 2018 250 FX. Love it. I can't post pictures here. Let's see. With McGrath in it. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to kind of roll into some of the other questions that we had over the course of the week. It's like, Jimmy, why don't you test Sherco, Gas, TM, SMW, insert name of small brand manufacturer here and there? Why is there no 2-stroke shootout? It's simple. Number one, we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of that. It's not that we don't get the offers to do it. Sometimes it requires hopping on a plane, maybe flying yourself back there. Of course, they'll fly the big books out there, but that's who's getting the exposure currently. So until we get enough exposure, they're not going to pay to have us come out and test their bikes, nor Do I have a job that lets me take 4 days to go back east to test some of those bikes? I would personally rather have them out here where we test all of our other bikes so we can run them around the same terrain, same conditions. And if you think, oh, well, this bike only works back east, well, I have back east conditions here. I've ridden all over the place. I can evaluate a bike here and understand how it's going to work in a lot of different conditions. We have sand, we have, tight technical. See, our trees, they don't have big, strong branches on them. They have sharp, prickly little points like cactus. Ever heard of that stuff? You go around the cactus just as much as you go around the trees. So, J. Frank Parnell. You'll find one in every car, Mark. Somebody just popped something up on the feed that knocked me off my track. But anyways, I'd love to test those bikes. It just kind of comes down to time. And if you have followed me over the years, I have no problem testing the smaller and more obscure, weird brands. And I don't come into it with some preconceived notion that this bike sucks. I take everything kind of with an open mind, appreciate things for what they are, understand that a lot of times the people that ride weird bikes like Husabergs have something wrong with them, and maybe they want to be different. So it's not to say that that's the best bike in the world, because the bikes that sell huge numbers are built for large groups of riders, not more specific niche type groups. So that's the main reason that we haven't been able to do that. We did test the gas, when they introduced their kind of all new two-stroke last year. We've been offered to do TMs. I know specifically. I haven't heard anything from the SMW people. Clay from Sherco had reached out to me a couple times, and I just exactly wasn't totally available to go do that. I said, send a bike out here, and I'd love to try it. And I know you've seen those bikes winning at Extreme Enduro, so I even get more excited about trying that. And I've liked them in the past when I've had the opportunity to ride them. I don't believe I've ridden a Sherco two-stroke. I might have had a real quick stint on one, but not for anything I can comment on for a long period of time. But I have ridden the four-strokes, and I thought the four-strokes were actually pretty good. Why no two-stroke shootout? Well, you got to get all the bikes together at the same place at the same time. KTM and Husky are selling every two-stroke that they make quite easily, and they have really not a whole lot of desire to let one sit around here while I wait for a gas to show up or a Beta to show up. And I can probably get those if I start reaching out. In fact, I'm trying to get my hands on a Beta 200 because I think Beta is doing what Beta does best. They've found a niche that KTM has left a little opening in, and now they're going to produce that. I have a KTM 200 sitting with the cylinder off right there. So I know about 200s. I like them. So that's the answer to that question. And I'm going to go back and see if we got any questions coming in here. I don't think so here. No, Bob, that wasn't Brent Farrell. That was J. Frank Parnell. He is the guy who's driving the stolen Chevy Malibu in Repo Man. So it's really off the cuff here, but it is the best movie ever made. Emilio Estevez's finest moments were in that movie, like when he's throwing up over the bridge. I think it's the first throw up scene ever in a Hollywood production, real throw up. So I don't know a whole lot about it. So let's see. Can you talk about? Okay, there's something navigation style events. I'm gonna get to that one. The other thing is somebody sent me a message, and it was 10-hour piston replacement, question mark. How can this be true? That was what I got. And I'm like, 10-hour piston replacement on, okay, that's just the question I got. What bike were you talking about? In what reference? And I need a little more information on that. I was just kind of blown away. And then, so I asked those questions back, and they said, well, on the internet, I read that Honda has a 10-hour piston replacement. And I'm like, okay, on which model? I'm sure they sell some, some sort of, kit race bikes someplace that might have that, but I'm not aware a 10-hour piston replacement. Maybe there's. I wish I had a manual for every bike. In fact, I do have some manuals. You know what, Mitch? I'm gonna have you go reach into that cabinet over there and pull out one of the Honda manuals, and then we're gonna look up just CRF 450. It'd be an older CRF 450X, but we're gonna find out what the piston replacement is. And I'm waiting for the manual on the new CRF 450X because I want to see those things, that and the L specifically. I don't know if that's the. Oh, that'll work. Yeah. So see if there's service. You have to do. I can't read and talk at the same time. So you got a job now. So Mitch is here helping me my way through here. He's my taco delivery. I'm watching my tacos get soggy, but it's okay. I think that's what they were talking about. I think they were talking about a Honda 450X or L. And the question is, can this be true? Well, I guarantee you that in the manual that they have some 15 hours on a Honda CR4. This is a 2005, 2006 CR450X calls for a 15-hour piston replacement. And you notice how I'm surprised. You notice how I think that's ridiculous.
That's only under racing conditions.
Yeah, it says only under racing conditions. There's an asterisk next to that. So the reason I'm surprised and amazed is because the fact that people believe that kind of stuff, number one, and that they think that those are. I always said it. I think I said it last week. Those service intervals are written by lawyers. It's written so just in case the fact that the hardest rider in the world hops on, one of these bikes and rings it out, they know it will last for 15 hours, and they know exactly how many hours the crank's going to last. They know how long the valves are going to last, and all that kind of stuff. And if you think you're riding that thing at peak torture, you should probably go by those service intervals. Otherwise, if you're a normal person like me, you're probably going to get much, much longer, and your motor and your bike will talk to you and let you know, whether it starts losing power, or it starts smoking, or you did something dumb like let sand get by the filter. Well, I didn't do it. My kid that was here, he didn't put enough oil on it. Sucked a little bit of sand. Maybe you unintentionally, but got it super, super hot and boiled out all the coolant and still had to ride 20 miles before you're able to put water in it. Then you should start thinking about, now it's time to service my motorcycle. So I go a little bit more with the common sense service interval as opposed to exactly what the manual says. I know at Dirt Rider we did 150 hours on a CR450X. I don't remember the specific number, but then we tore it down. We split the cases. We laid every part out on the ground, and we said, this is how long this bike had on it. And I remember tearing that motor apart and going, man, this was a waste of time because nothing was bad. Everyone we'd find something that was like, yeah, maybe I would replace this. But remember the Honda, we put it back together. Actually, the guys from Honda were there watching us take it apart because they wanted, they're curious and they want to make sure we do it right. But they watched us disassemble the motor, and we got it apart. They slapped it back together with the same piston and rings back into it. So that kind of shows, and they have access to all the parts that they need, and they put it back together all stock and bolted it back together and probably took it and sold it in a loan pool to a dealer. And I guarantee you that whoever bought that thing is probably still riding it around today. And I have two CR450Xs, older ones that have south of 100 hours on them, and not even, actually one of them was a long-term bike at Dirt Rider, and I think we've rebuilt it once just to check, but can't remember. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about those intervals. I don't think it's a big deal. So I'm going to go back to the navigation question. Can you talk about the navigation setup for Baja style events? I watched your video on the 9 days you spent riding single track in Idaho with 2 units on the handlebars. How's that set up, and what software is it running? Dimitri, I believe his name is. So Dimitri, you watched my Tour of Idaho video. In that video, I am using two Trailtech Voyagers. This is previous to them having a Voyager Pro, but I'm looking at two Trailtech Voyagers. Everybody wants to know why I run two, and it's because I'm running them at two different zoom levels. So one zoomed out more and one zoomed in. So the one that zoomed in I can almost use for really quick turn by turn. You can see where the turns come up really quick, and then you can see if you're off the trail. Like if you miss a turn and your arrow goes away from the track log line, you know right away. But if you're zoomed out really far, sometimes it takes a lot longer. So I had 2 zoom levels running on that, and this is all it's all GPS tracks and GPS track logs. It's completely different than rally navigation. But if you have a good track log that you want to follow or you want to record your track log, those are great units for it. And then the other thing was for redundancy, because that ride, I was out on a 9-day solo ride, and just in case something went bad, I wanted to have a spare. So you never know with, technology, electronic stuff, or I could have crashed and something could have broke one of them. So that was the reason for 2 of them. But in learning how to ride a track log, efficiently and safely and stuff is a skill and a technique. So, because you don't want to be staring down at the computer when you're supposed to be looking where you're going. You need to know how to take a glance at it and see how that stuff works. So, hopefully that answers your question. But it's basically Trailtech Voyagers, and it's just running their standard software. You can do it with Garmin's. I'm not a big fan of the Garmin's just because their stuff is so proprietary, and it's difficult to basically, I have a hard time manipulating the track logs into forms that work good in the Garmin units. So, and then I have friends that really like the Montanas, and then they have a way to share, and the Trailtech you share just using a little tiny SD card. So, let's see. I'm gonna scroll through here and see what. Let's see. Beta 200 review yesterday was pretty pleased. Review, yes, pretty pleased. Let's see. In Level Canyon, wanna rip with 5 vets tomorrow. I can hear you, so double thumbs up if yes. You can't hear me. Why? There's no sound. I'm not sure. I actually got an offer to go to Mammoth tomorrow to go snowboarding, and I don't know if I can get out of here. So, not really sure. It seems like we're getting to the end of the snowboarding, and I haven't been for a while, so I need to get back on that thing. I got lucky today to find a deposit slot for a 790R. I know that you may have ridden one. What do you think? I'm doing the Idaho BDR in September and can't wait. Yes, I have ridden a 790R. I don't know if it was a completely stock one or not. It was for some suspension testing stuff. So you're going to love that bike. What do I think? I think it's great. That's all I can say until I really, really ride it. When we get one here so I can actually go and test it, then I can give you a much more thorough evaluation of it. But I think, as you can see, the journalists seem to really like it, and I'm pretty sure KTM hit a home run with that bike. So let's see. Sierra 450X, good to go. 100 to 125 hours, easy. Oil changes are cheap. Air filters are cheap. Take care of your moto. Mark, excellent advice. I agree with you. Let's see. Any discussions on the 250X? Chris Rose, not yet. We haven't got there yet. And Mark asked me, what do I think about Ironmanning a 100-mile mini bike race on a Coleman mini bike with no suspension? He's talking about the Gambler. I don't know if they call it the Gambler 100 or the Gambler Mini. Something I have in the back of my mind is to do the Gambler 500, which is a car rally, more so because I want to organize one out here, because it seems like they go out, drive junky cars out around and off-road, pick up trash, and have a great time, and I want to do that. So let's see. Let's get right into the Yamaha Powder Tuner. And I know that was probably one of the biggest questions that was asked after we did our 250 FX comparison, which is up on the main screen on dirtbiketest.com right now. We picked the Yamaha basically as our favorite bike. And stock, it was our favorite bike, but the ability to tune it, and hold on a second. Where is it? The tuner's right over there. I wonder if somebody will grab me that tuner. It sits around here because we use it. Actually, we don't have any need for it right now because that bike's gone, unfortunately. But this gem here, or the app that you have on your phone now that comes free with your YZ, is one of those things that. And then there's other aftermarket solutions. There's stuff. So what you're able to do with this specific line, the Yamaha, is you're able to tune the fuel mapping to a certain amount, and then the ignition mapping to a certain amount. And they've decided where they put limits on it, so you can't go too far. You can't do anything that would kind of hurt or destroy your bike. And you probably could if you really tried. But for most people, like the minute you start going to where it doesn't run well or it's going to do something bad, the bike's running so bad anyways, you probably won't continue. Hopefully, you won't continue to ride it like that. So with the app, we published. I know, where did I put the photos up? I think they were up someplace. That's why I say follow all of our different socials. You'll that way you get all the different informations. But I put the maps that we used, and then someone asked me to describe the different maps, to say how they were, and because I said one was more for a novice rider. I'm pretty sure it's up on Facebook. I think it was a post that I put up on Facebook this afternoon. So one was more that our novice riders preferred, and it was one that was quite a bit richer on the bottom, and there was no ignition advance in it. And when you're tuning this, and our maps are specific to our guys, somebody will tell me, hey, I would like it to do this, and I'll goof around really quickly and drum up a map, and I'll say, hey, what do you think? And then they try it, and then we change a couple things, and we work on it. So we're not afraid to test or try different things. And that's the cool thing about these apps. It's so easy to do. It takes 10 or 15 seconds once you've actually made the map to go out and plug it in, try it, and go out and do another lap or another section or whatever you're trying to do. The best way to think about this when you're tuning the bike is if you're doing it like for jetting reasons, you've done something, you've altered the exhaust or changed the intake, or something that the temperature really changed, and generally the fuel injection compensates for that, but you're trying to change it. The fueling, if you're having a problem and you can't figure it out, go 3 or 4 steps higher in that range. Instead of just being at 0, go to 5 plus 5 and see if that helps, and then go down to -5 and see if that helps. And then if one was better than the other, then you'll know. And even if your bike is running perfect and you want to know how this works, bump it up a little bit higher and then make it leaner, and try them both ways and see how it works. You're not going to hurt anything, and you're going to learn how it works. Everybody just wants, hey, what's the best map? Plug it in. But so you can play with it just to see how it works. And then if you're saying, I want this bike to do something this or that, here's how you think about it. I always think about, and it's more prevalent on a 450 than it is on a 250. But the way I think about it is that if I want the bike to spin up quicker or spin a little bit more, I want to lean it. I want to lean the fuel mixture. And if I want it to get more traction or feel like it hooks up better, or maybe similar as saying slow down the RPMs, then I richen the fuel mixture. And so there's times where I'll make little micro adjustments, maybe 1 or 2 spots in one and go one direction in the other area. And you have to just kind of realize, what throttle position am I in? What RPM am I at? And then that puts you in the right spot in the grid. And the old Yamaha tuner, this one, was very simple, and it was just 3x3. It wasn't very difficult. The new one is 4x4. It gives you a little bit more tuning options and stuff. I believe the Honda HRC tuner is 10x10 grid. And some of the aftermarket ones I've worked with, Yoshimura used to have one that was sort of had an auto tune, and DynoJet has one that is the grid is massive. It's every 500 RPMs, I believe. So there's lots of stuff you can tune with. But the fuel, I always say fuel is traction. You want more traction, add more fuel. You want less traction, take fuel away. That's the feeling you get. I don't think it's actually traction. It's actually the feeling. And then if you have the opportunity to do ignition, then ignition to me is more like throttle response. And if you want quicker, snappier, more aggressive throttle response, advance the ignition. And then if you want it to feel a little more dead at the throttle, not as responsive, retard the ignition from its current spot. So that's how I separate those two, and that's the way that I think about it when I'm riding. It's, do I want more throttle response, or do I want more traction or less throttle response? Vice versa. Then when you start blending those two things together, and here's where it gets confusing, is sometimes when you put, sometimes you add a little bit of fuel and it gets a little bit lazy, because didn't want it to go rev up so quick, but then maybe you can just tune it a little bit back with the ignition. And so it's playing with each of the settings and testing it. And depending on how you ride, you may be somebody that goes to big throttle openings at low RPMs. And then, those type of riders tend to like sometimes a leaner fuel mixture and a more aggressive ignition setting, whereas someone that's up on the RPMs, that kind of a setting will be a little bit kind of crazy, might kind of be a little bit too aggressive. So it's something you can play with. It's easy to do. It works. It's kind of consistent across the board. The one thing I really like to try is someone asked me a question about trying the JD tuner on the 300 TPI, the new fuel injected the two-stroke KTM, and I haven't had a chance to do that, so I don't know how that works. If two-stroke will seem different or change, but it sure would be kind of neat to try. So, and that is currently the next bike on my list to buy. Is when I buy a bike, I'm going to replace my 200 with a 300 TPI. So that's where my head's at. So let's see here. I am going to see if we got any other questions before I go back to my board. Let's see. Feed is not dropping out. Amazing, huh? Gambler 500. Hey, Glenn. Yeah, good to see you. Let's see, Kip. Have you seen how great Scott Myers is doing the? I have not had a chance to follow the Morocco rally. Just I have some of my friends right now that are racing another rally in Morocco in cars, and Andrew Short is currently over doing the Dubai rally, doing really well. Actually, he was doing really good, and then he had a little technical problem. I don't know exactly what it was just yet, but lost about 40 minutes, which is no bueno. But he's still in there. That's a crazy fun rally. Let's see. Replying. Okay, they're talking to each other there. My wife, hey Heather, she's on the line. Hayward, on my CR450L went 4 teeth less on the rear sprocket. It seemed to help the snappiness and mileage. Now I ordered another sprocket with 8 teeth less. What do you think of that? How about getting a different countershaft sprocket? Why don't you go one bigger on the countershaft sprocket? That might save you some of the hassle. Hayward, get a JD jetting tuner. That'll fix that snappiness right away. It really does. That bike is so lean in the bottom, and I think we actually wrote that in our test and stuff. So that will the tuner fixes that issue on that bike for sure. So I know that. Let's see. Okay, so we're gonna kind of work down the line. I know a lot of people saw the little video we posted up of the KTM 1190 with the Christini all-wheel drive system attached to it. That was, it's something that it's a prototype thing that we're testing. Steve has, I rode one of Steve's very first CRF 450s back in, 2004. I don't even remember how long ago. It was a long time ago. He brought this contraption, and it was all-wheel drive, and I'm like, yeah, I want to ride it. And he'd been to a couple other media outlets and other magazine guys that just wrote it and said, what a pile of crap. This is junk. Because it's different, and it feels different. And when you looked at how he hacked an aluminum frame apart and put these gears and a chain on the side of it and had these spindles going down the front, I can see where, if you're picky about that kind of stuff, or you think everything has to look exactly like whatever your favorite thing is, that could happen. But I really wanted to ride it because I'm like, what does a two-wheel drive motorcycle feel like? And I was impressed. Not to say that there weren't some problems with the very first one. There was, because he had to move some stuff around. There was a little bit of handling issues. Some of the parts were actually not strong enough, and we broke them. But instead of like going, this is junk, I'm like, I'm interested to see how this works. I want to try it some more. And we actually went to a friend's house and machined some new parts and went out and played around with it a little bit more. And this was back, I believe, when it was right before I left Cycle World and right before I started at Dirt Rider. So there was stories in each one of those magazines about that first bike, and I came away pretty impressed. I said, I think this technology has a place or a home. And shortly after that, Steve kind of announced that they were going to start building conversion kits, and he was already in his head, I'm going to build a motorcycle. Well, he'd already built a bicycle, and to learn more about that, the technology, I actually got a all-wheel drive mountain bike. I bought a not a bought I didn't buy one. I borrowed one from him for a while, and rode that around, and learned quite a bit from that as well. Because everybody says, well, how does it climb hills? You know, the motorcycle. That's what everybody thinks, and I'm like, I don't remember it climbing hills that much better. In fact, that was probably one of the places where it was at its worst, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I noticed on the bicycle that, man, I could go downhill so much better because the front end didn't want to slide and wash out, and interesting things like that. And then when we played around with the motorcycle a little bit more, I started realizing that motorcycle it's really quick. It, like when you accelerate, it just kind of goes. So instead of trying to push the front end, it's like the whole bike just kind of gets up and goes. So if you're in a traction compromised situation, sand, mud, someplace where your tires have a pretty good equal footing, those bike actually kind of like lunge forward and want to pull. And then I ended up getting, when he made his first kit, I have a CRF 250X that I still have, that has the all-wheel drive kit out, and I still ride it quite a bit. And so since I have put time on it, I've learned the differences, how it works and stuff. So you start thinking it's different. It's the same difference as if you have a two-wheel drive car and a four-wheel drive car. And if you're going to go drive dirt roads or go slide around, you drive a two-wheel drive car much different than you drive a four-wheel drive car. You counter steer a lot in the two-wheel drive car, and you're just kind of shifting the weight. You know, you're trying to get the weight on the back wheel. Where an all-wheel drive car, you kind of bend it in the turn and steer around the turn. And although the motorcycle's a little bit different, you can do that, but it's more the all-wheel drive bike will turn a lot more efficiently without having to lean so much. You know, so like in trees, I found it really, when you're on, you know, more level ground or just slight inclines in trees, you can go around a tree, turn a tree, and you can gas it, and it'll actually pull the front end around, as opposed to needing a berm or wanting to slide. If you're on wet grass, it's crazy how good it works, because you don't want to lean over too much on wet grass, and the bike can kind of stay upright and still kind of tug itself. It actually turns. Starting in sand, the back end doesn't want to go down. The bike just wants, and that's when you can see in this video, because I turn the all-wheel drive on and off a couple times, and you can see the difference in how the bike moves. And so of course, with every advantage, there's a disadvantage, and here's the disadvantage. And this is why we wanted to talk about the uphills. So when you're going an uphill, your front wheel is very light, and most riders tend to use the steering to kind of the handlebars to control their balance. So if your rear wheel is spinning and your front wheel is very light, maybe it's even in the air, and you start losing your balance and you put your wheel down pointing one direction or the other, and that wheel is driving, it will pull that way. So uphills, you have to be very careful about pointing where you want to go. So that's kind of the one of the small disadvantages that has. Plus, you're talking about, there's some weight disadvantage, there's some mechanical complexity disadvantage, there's things like that. But I really like it, and as the military has found out, it's really good for novice riders, especially people that don't have a lot of time on motorcycles, because that traction that front wheel gets tends to save riders and get them out of, you know, bad predicaments. I think really what the two biggest things that Christini has going against them is, number one, it's a different thing. It's just like disc brakes, just like power valves, just like 4 strokes, just like 2 strokes. Like, the motorcycle industry is so reluctant to change a new technology. Fuel injection. Oh no, we don't want fuel injection. It's going to make the bike slow. So there's a little bit of that to all-wheel drive, and it's been going along for a while, and some manufacturers have definitely looked at it, and there's manufacturers have very interesting patents. Yamaha and Öhlins had that patent with a hydraulic drive. If you look closely, KTM has an interesting patent now with an electric front drive that they're trying to make work. The military, through DARPA, has had some interesting concepts thrown at them that had different electric drives put into the front wheel, but really nothing has come close to working as efficiently as the mechanical design. And I had a really good question. My friend Rich, who's does off-roading, four-wheel drive, does the We Rock series, and For Low is his magazine. So he's all into that kind of stuff. He said, what about the torque steer? Smart guy. Yes, there is torque steer, but that's actually what's interesting about the Christini patents is it eliminates or minimizes the torque steer. It's not to say that you're not going to get some, but it really kind of cuts it down. That was funny. On the mountain bike, it was a single shaft going down one side of the fork driving it because you don't have that much power. And on the motorcycle, they ended up having to come up with two to make sure that it doesn't do the torque steer. And pretty complex system, very interesting. I was blown away by it on an adventure bike. I had ridden the guy's 950 he converted over 5 or 6 years ago, but it was a interesting contraption with a lot of chains and extra drives. But this is Steve's kind of new design. It's actually a very early prototype. It's here so I can break it for him, so it can be stronger and better. But I was blown away by how easy it makes that bike to, in low traction situations, to get started, get moving. You could stop on an adventure bike. My kind of rule is you don't park on an uphill in the sand because you're not going to go uphill. On that bike, you could. So pretty cool. Pretty excited to be testing it. And we'll see where it goes. So if you have any questions about that, I can probably answer them, I think. And Chris Real says being outside the box is good. Yeah, Chris tests a lot of weird stuff too. He can't talk about it though. Let's see. Don't wait till the Tenere 700 comes out to enjoy your tacos. Wow, that's a Yamaha Slam, isn't it? That's good. They've been dangling that bike in front of us for a long time. I'd like to ride it too. In fact, I told them in all their marketing stuff they needed to go get Daniel Laporte to ride that bike because they were getting these kind of heroes. They had Peter Hansel ride it, and they're getting famous people from different countries to ride it, and they never really, I don't know that it ever came to the United States on its tour or whatever it was doing. But Danny has a history of racing Yamaha twin-cylinder bikes in Dakar. He rode all different kinds of bikes there, but he would be the perfect guy. He won a 250cc world championship for Yamaha, so Danny would be super awesome to do that, and then I could peel Danny for information and tell you guys how good that bike was, or not, or who knows. But I don't know. So let's see. I think we kind of handled most of those questions there. Did I miss any? I was going to give one of you guys one of these monitors here to check. Let's see. I think that's it. I know I got another picture here, or another question here. It says, Jimmy, why are your knees always dirty in the photos on Dirt Bike Test? And I know one of the photos, and then I go, really, what? And then I had to go look at it, and it's like, do you know what I'm out there doing, like, in order to get people to take my pictures before I go riding? I mean, come on. You know, we're out there, and yeah, I'm taking my backpack off and putting the camera on the ground, and then we have to take the lens off and all that stuff. I don't know what you were thinking, but so that's why the knees are dirty. I usually don't dust my knees off after we're, you know, crawling around on the ground, setting up all the camera equipment and stuff like that. It's not like the old days when I had, you know, assistants and, you know, dressers and, you know, people on top of people to, you know, make sure everything looked good. This is just a rinky-dink little, changing shock settings and adjusting the bike. Yeah, I do that too. See, my wife knows. Actually, usually I'm yelling at her to take the photo. I'm setting the camera up and say, hey, can you take this photo? And she's like, why can't we just go riding like the old days? So, anyways, I think that's most of the questions. What did you do? You got your smart guy not trying to suck up my bandwidth, but the feed's been good, right? Is this better here? I mean, it's not better for me. I'd rather be at Ramiro's. By the way, if you're ever in Pahrump, Nevada, stop by Ramiro's. Go by, say hi to Janie. She will try to sign you up for the tequila club. But since Janie's not here, George is here. Yeah, what do you think? You think like all of a sudden you got my attention? So yeah, good on you. This is what do we got? Casamigos? Yeah, not bad. I'd eat tacos, but they're all crunchy and makes bad sounds. So, so, anyways, anybody out there have any other questions? I can answer 9 out of 10 without referring to a reference manual. I'm surprised nobody's asking about the bearing picture that I posted up earlier in the day. I was gonna kind of keep that one. I was gonna wait for somebody to ask and then prompt the question. But I'm hoping to get our CR450X long-term update number 1 up on dirtbiketest.com. I'll tease it on the social medias when I get it up there. We've done a lot of cool things to the bike, worn some stuff out, broke one thing, been testing the clutches, and when I went back in to take the Recluse Radius CX back out, I noticed there was a little extra wobble in the clutch basket, and that's when I pulled out and inspected that clutch hub bearing. That's the photo I shot the picture of. So I didn't go running to the internets and say, oh my God, every Honda 450X is going to blow up. The clutch is going to blow up. No, I actually called them and asked them if it was a known issue. They are checking on it. What it appears is that where that bearing, that $4 bearing, was seam welded, the cage, it looks like it has kind of started to come apart. I think that allowed the bearing to rock a little bit and allowed the clutch basket to rock. I didn't notice that any other time, so maybe it's a new thing. So we're checking into it to see how it works. Hopefully I'll have a new bearing tomorrow and I can throw that thing back together and go riding. And I'll let you know, but we'll have all that information in our update on that bike. I pick up a Yamaha WR450 next week. We are going to get it set up with the competition ECU and have some other cool stuff in there. So expect a comparison soon. I think a lot of people are curious about that bike. I was really excited with that bike after the first impression, and I knew that we rode it in a kind of like, we'll call it a power-up stage from completely stock, but I knew if I could get that ECU in there, which will allow me to tune it with my phone, just like the YZ450, I'll be super, super stoked to do that, and then maybe putting a little bit of an exhaust on it and stuff like that can bring it up to the level where we have our 450. So I think we got a couple other quick comments and stuff here. Let's see. Yeah, Mojave Bob told me he got seasick from watching one of the first ones, so I turned that camera following feature off. Let's see. Dimitri, fatty front tires. Good, bad, where do they work? What bike are you specifically talking about? If you're thinking about like the one fatty I have a lot of experience with is that golden tire, and I don't know what code number letters that one is, but it is their kind of fatty tire. I've used that on my adventure bikes and on my KTM 500, and I was really impressed with it. In fact, Golden Tire helped us out at King of the Motos one year. They came out and they supported all of my course workers, and they gave a lot of the course workers free tires, which was super cool. And that was the tire they gave a few of us, and everybody that's put one of those things on there, all my guys that put those things on there, are buying them again. They're really good, especially in sand, and the durability's good. And I tend to like them in a traction sense. I don't like them sometimes when you start talking about like more racing performance. They get a little bit heavy. They kind of certain times they grab ruts a little bit different. So there's pluses and minuses to them. It really depends on what you're looking for. But I think for the most part, people have been really pretty happy with how that all works. And let's see, helmet project still in progress. I haven't worked on it too much. Part-time job. So I noticed when I announced that, a couple people reached out and a couple people went silent. So we'll see. It's I don't know. Some people I think are kind of convinced that it's better to let their marketing team do the marketing and a real solid test. In all honesty, the only reason I would want to do that is not to pick better or worse or something like that, but to get the results out there. And I'll tell you what will happen. If we do this the way we did it at Dirt Rider, when I did a blind test, an anonymous test of these helmets, the top helmets reveal themselves. And then everybody gets to see how the top helmets performed, and they know who the top helmets are. And then the helmets that come out not so good in the test, they go back and look at where they didn't perform well. And I guarantee they look at how the top helmets performed, and they figure out how can we get there, or can we get there, or how does it work? So net. And then as you as a consumer, you know which one the top helmets are, and then you can decide, does that helmet work for me? Or you start learning about the standards, just some education, learning about what standards are, whether a certain standard meets kind of what you're really doing with your head and what you can expect. So that's a pretty important thing. So it's just educational. And if we have to smash, $20,000, $40,000 worth of helmets to get there, we're all better off for it. So we'll see. It would be huge if we could pull it off. It is a time-consuming thing. It is expensive with the lab time, and I really haven't really started pushing to find out what it would truly cost for us to be able to do that. So, So San Felipe Bob says, I think I remember turning off the two-wheel drive to reduce deflection. Bob raced, what'd you race? The Ducati 250 Enduro on the Cristini that I have. I think he took it was a 250. We punched it out to a 280. We put what kit was that on it? I'm pretty sure it was the bolt-on one. So it was like the Cylinder Works 280 kit, 270 or something like that. Put that thing on there. Man, that made it such a much better bike. It just gave it a little extra torque it needed to help pull the drag on the motor. So he raced that thing once, so he definitely has some experience with it. I tell you what, when we go riding in the snow, it's the first bike I take. It's such a cheater. It's like letting all your friends get stuck up on the hill that's all iced up, and you put a few studs in your tire and they're not looking, and then you ride right past them, not spinning, and go, "What are you guys doing?" It's almost like that level of cheating. So let's see. Going back to the InReach versus the Spot X, which is better? InReach. Spot, I had a few spots. I was a Spot guy in the beginning. I had a few spots, and it seemed like every time they introduced a new one, my old one magically stopped working, and then there was issues with it, and then I could get a discount on buying a new one, and I didn't like that. I don't know why it happened. I don't know, not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I didn't like that happened. But what sold me on the InReach was the ability to do two-way texting and communication solely through the device. I don't have to pair it with another device to do that, so it just eliminates one extra battery to go dead or whatever. I've had really good success with my InReach. I've never had to use it in a real critical emergency, but I know friends that have, and it seems like it's worked. So that's my current go-to, and I'm pretty sure you'll see more and more stuff come out on the market. And so that's where I'm at on that one. Let's see. Shinko makes a copy of the Golden Tire. Okay. You know what I found? There's a lot of companies making copies of things. And I don't even know where Golden Tire started. I think Golden Tire was making soft rubber compounds of copies of other tires as well. But when you get one of these tires as a copy, I'm not saying the Shinko is good or bad. I haven't tried it, so I can't really. We did some of their soft tires. I think they're the Shinkos. They're the ones that are done through Western Power Sports. We tested some of their tires, and they're gummies. I believe they were, and one was really good and one was bad. And there were two different sizes. There were slightly different tread compounds, and I think they just stuck whatever gummy rubber they had on a existing carcass, and somehow the carcass and the gummy compound didn't mesh or match up on one of them. I'd have to go back and read the test to remember. But it was at the time when gummy or sticky tires were just starting to come around. In fact, because Golden was the one that was doing them, and Dunlop was selling them for, race only ridiculous amounts of money. So there was definitely a market for it. And so when you see some of these copy tires and stuff like that, it may look the same on the outside, but the carcass is doing a lot of work on a tire. And the good thing about tires is they're easily replaceable, and they are wear items. So don't be afraid to try one. I mean, if you see a price point on a tire and you say, man, that tire looks good, I can't pass it up, try it. I mean, go for it. See if it works. I mean, that's how I learn. I try a lot of different stuff. So when, there's a lot more engineering that goes into a tire, and that's why sometimes you just kind of stick to the big brands. And in my experience, my biggest fight with this is in the adventure market, where everybody wants that magic tire that looks like a knobby that gets 9,000 miles of durability. And I'm like, you're fooling. If you're getting 9,000 miles, you're making a tire made out of cement. It's not rubber. So, that Christini that's doing that all-wheel drive stuff. Here's the other thing about that Christini. To roll back, that bike has some of my least favorite tires on it for adventure bikes, and it actually works okay. I'm usually scared on these tires, and because the all-wheel drive was working, it actually got traction. It felt okay. So maybe sometimes different drive systems will mask poor tires. So I think we're getting close to doing a full hour here. Wrapped it up. I think we've got most of the questions answered. Let's see. Ducati Enduro. Let's see. Rolling through this. Shinko copy of the Golden Tire shed side knobs in my experience. I don't know. I haven't done it. Let's see. Thanks for the response. Yes. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in and watching. I think that we had a good feed. Seems like that stayed consistent this time. I'm happy. So to roll back up, check dirtbiketest.com on the interwebs so you can see what we're really doing. Share this through Facebook. Direct people back. You can listen to this as a podcast. You can stick it in your pocket with the volume up and hear kind of the information maybe while you're driving or while you're doing something else, working in the garage. I know what I was going to do. I was going to actually do a proper tech tip, just to do something. My tacos got me distracted. George, can you hand me the cylinder there? So I'm going to do the last minute here tech tip. And I think I put the piston over here. So this is my KTM 200 cylinder. This is a 2004 or 5. I don't remember what year it is. It's been through a lot. Actually, this bike has ridden almost every single King of the Motos course ever constructed, more than once. I'm looking for my piston rings here. New ring, old ring. Where's the old ring? Here we go. Okay, so just a quick thing. Does you ever wonder if your bike's worn out, or if your rings are worn out or something like this? A simple way to check. This is all described in manuals, but I'm just going to visually show you here real quick with this jug. See, my PBR was empty. I'd shove it in there, and it's not a 200cc PBR. So here's your piston. You take your ring, and you have your ring off the piston, and you can press it down, and you make sure that the ring ends are going someplace where they're not going to pop into a port. Usually where the pin is on the piston would help you. And you take it and you just shove it in here like this, and you set your piston there. And you look inside there, that's how you see the end gap. Okay? And you say, okay, there's measurements for that and everything. But if you don't have all the tools and you just have your old ring and then you have a new ring, you take your new ring and you put it in there just like the old one, and you set it in there like that, and you slide it in here like this, and then you can look down in there and you can see the difference, and you can see whether your old ring was worn out. You never know. This one probably had I think it was 150 hours on this. Yeah, Jimmy doesn't change his stuff very often. I run good oil. Make sure it's mixed properly, because I mix it like this. So anyways, you can check the difference, and you can see, hey, that was worn out, or it wasn't worn out. And here's what I do. So if I ran this for, let's say, 25 hours and it wasn't worn out, the next time it's going to go 30. The next time it's going to go 40. I can check each time and see, and I start getting a gauge for it, and I realize, well, the rings aren't wearing out. How about the piston? There's ways to measure the piston. You can take your new piston in there, flop it around, Put your old one in there, flop it around, feel the difference. Is that piston worn out? This one's definitely worn out. The ring is definitely worn out. The small end bearing is definitely worn out on this bike, on this particular bike. So we're going to put all that stuff. We got a Vertex piston kit. We're going to throw it all on there and put this thing back together, and hopefully Gabe will have a bike. So thanks again for watching. We will see you next week, hopefully. Actually, this thing has to keep growing. The minute it doesn't grow, I'm done. I'm going riding. So, because it's getting warmer during the day, and I can go riding at 7 o'clock at night. So we'll catch you on the flip side. See you around.